Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Welcome back to the show. Today I'm here with my good friend Richard Gonzalez. He is dominating the San Antonio market. And we're really going to be talking about dominating a market in a time where a lot of real estate investors think the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, going out into new markets, changing their exit strategies, maybe even changing asset classes, or maybe even getting out of real estate. He's done some amazing things by staying just laser focused on very specifically, not even all of San Antonio, just a very small area around the downtown area of San Antonio. So really interesting focus here. Great guy, great operator. And so Richard, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, Mike.
Yeah, I'm excited we just started talking again. We haven't talked for a few years and started talking again recently when you rejoined Investor Fuel, and you're doing the same thing that you were doing, in the years past when we talked. So just kind of further along, but excited to kind of share your story today and learn about some of the things that you're doing that are working well, and maybe learn from some things that haven't worked so well too, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of what we do. Yeah. Hey, tell us a little bit about your background for those that don't know you yet.
Yeah. So I've been a full-time real estate investor for the last 10 years. Before that, I built and ran a merchant services company out of Los Angeles. So we focus on credit card processing for small businesses.
Okay.
Most of my clients were Latino-based, carnicerias, taquerias, the beauty salons, that type of thing. So during that time, I said, where else can we go outside of California where there was a good demographic? And Texas popped up. So San Antonio in particular, had a big demographics and with a lot of potential for growth. So the move paid off. I opened sales offices in Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio. And for the first 2-3 years, we were expanding tremendously until the payment apps started coming out, Square, Stripe, and a bunch of others, offering zero transaction fees, monthly service fees. And my business relied on those type of income. So I was pretty much, my attrition was going through the roof. Luckily, at the same time, one of my best friends was living with me, and he was a real estate investor, but went bankrupt in the '08 crash. He lost millions of dollars. So he's now living with me in San Antonio. I tell people he was the one sleeping in the couch. And I'm watching this guy literally rebuild his net worth, in front of my own eyes, buying cheap vacant lots near downtown. And within the first 2 years, he literally had 15 to 20 properties. And I just started seeing him flip them for 50, 60, 70. There was one lot in particular that he bought it for $10,000, sold it for 110. And that was it. That was the screw that turned in my head that I'm like, I don't know how this thing works, man. But I'm going all in, and that's when I pivoted to real estate. That was 2015, and since then, I also got into the vacant lot business, sold my lots, and then got into the rentals. Fast forward today, obviously we have a pretty big portfolio in downtown, and we're very niche specific, right? We're buying just everything around that we can get our hands on, and just continue to build our portfolio.
Yeah. And you've got around 200 rentals or so?
Yeah,
right?
200 plus right now.
Yeah, and growing. So what? Talk about this idea of staying laser focused on. Really, it's just one or two neighborhoods, right? It's a very small area, and I think, we're obviously recording this right now in DFW. There's 8 million people in DFW, and there's plenty of real estate investors here that I know that are like, this isn't big enough, so they start going into outlying areas, and they're like, seems like real estate investors generally feel the need to go further away or out farther, but you've ratcheted in more so than anybody else that I know, quite frankly. So just talk about like how that came about and how you are able to maintain that, because it's easy to feel like the grass is greener. Let me just go out to the suburbs. Let me just go over to this area, but you haven't done that.
No, absolutely. So from an operational perspective and building a rental portfolio, I think it's no different than investing in big apartment buildings, right? You have one building, you have all your tenants, your maintenance. So it's just doing something similar, but doing it in the single family space. And that's been a big benefit. So I think in my career, I literally have purchased 2 properties outside of my zone, my
Hmm.
operating zone, and they're the hardest to manage, the hardest to make ready. There's just something, some intricacies, management. I mean, all of our properties are basically around my office. So I can step in there at any time, whether we're doing the rehab, construction, and it's just kind of like having that shadow, right?
Yeah.
Where the boss can pop in at any time, and it makes a huge difference. So I think also from a collection perspective, and again, we can go on and on of all the comparisons of why it makes it a lot easier, especially we're already in a business that is pretty challenging to manage rentals, maintenance, repairs, etc. So when I started, obviously that was the area that I began with. So I basically pulled all the non-owner occupied properties, and then just started marketing to them, doing the yellow letters. Back then, yellow letters worked phenomenal. I was actually handwriting them for a while.
Hmm.
Then I hired a couple people to do to do it for me. But and that's what it was. It's basically been the same list ever since. It's just now condensing because now more homeowners are taking over the area.
Hmm.
So I just happened to also identify that area that I was marketing to was the biggest area for rentals.
Hmm.
So it just let me know there was less owner occupancy in that area,
Yeah.
and now it's transitioning back to more home ownership. That's why the values have gone up tremendously. Now you'll have almost $800,000 house next to $100,000 house. It's still a little spotty.
Yeah.
It's up and coming. So you have to be able to hold on until it's fully gentrified.
Yeah, and part of this is you said this right up front, which was fascinating. Is it's like 'cause I own a bunch of multifamily, and obviously the name of the game with commercial or multifamily is usually value add. Like how do you force appreciation by improving it? And that's exactly if you start to own I mean, I own a rental portfolio here, but I don't have any houses on the same street, and mine are spread across 15 different cities, right? So, like suburbs of Dallas, and so, but you can really force appreciation by owning several houses on the same street. You can start to push up those values, right?
Oh, big time, big time.
Yeah.
I think especially doing the Burr method. Once the comps they start using the comps. Some of the comps happen to be properties that you did.
Right.
So again, going back to, there's many reasons and many benefits to be able to be laser focused, especially when you have that many so that many properties. We're also in the short-term rental space, so we have a little bit over 100 short-term rentals. So that also controls the pricing, right? We can definitely push some people out if we need to, because we can drop the rates across the board. So, it's almost like just being in your own little island and just controlling the economies at
Yeah.
that point. So, yeah, it's amazing.
So if you have a couple hundred, do you know in the markets, the neighborhoods you're focused on, like what is the total population of houses that you could in theory buy?
Yeah, I think I think my marketing list at one point was about 1,500 properties.
Okay.
So 1,500 properties in that specifically
Yeah.
zip code was my target market.
Yeah.
And then, from now, maybe there's down to 500 or, that are left that haven't been sold or resold, and now there's an owner
Yeah. So
occupied.
so at some point you get them all, right? Or close, right? Yeah. And so I guess with a marketing list that small and a target that small, the exact owners, if they're ever going to sell or why not, probably their age and what pushes their buttons, or you probably know who some of the complainers are that you've got these short-term rentals. Like, everybody that is your prospect probably, right?
Yeah, you pretty much know every house.
Yeah.
If somebody calls me, they tell me they have a property under contract, what street, what block, you already, you're like Google Maps. You already know.
Yeah.
Okay, the 1,000 block. Okay, so I have 2 properties on that block. XYZ. So it makes it a lot easier too, from a buying perspective, because you're able to pull the trigger right away. In other words, if a property comes available today on MLS, I mean, we don't need to we could almost buy sight on scene, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Just based on square footage, the lot size, and the street. So we're making almost quick decisions just based off that, versus any other investor is probably going to have to go in there, get a couple quotes on the rehab. They got to do some, comparison, stuff like that. So it makes it a lot easier. But by that time, I mean, we pretty much already got it in contract. And it gives you that competitive edge.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you talked about economies of scale. So obviously with the management side, that makes a lot of sense because they're all right there. You could almost, like a hotel, just have people push their cleaning cart down the street to go to the next house, right? For the short-term rentals. But also with acquisitions, I mean, do you even have an acquisitions team? Because you know what you're buying, but if it's based off of, you probably know the house as soon as it pops up. So, like, talk about some of the efficiencies of your team of having a small targeted area that's kind of your farm area.
Yeah, at the beginning, I had all the entire marketing team. I had the acquisitions, transaction coordinators, etc. Because again, it was a buying frenzy. Now, 95% of my properties are coming in through wholesalers. So I think now, because I'm more established in the market, more people know that I'm buying in that particular area. So there's dozens, if not hundreds, of wholesalers in San Antonio.
Yeah.
So if something pops up in that neighborhood or those zip codes, at the end of the day, somehow is gonna still route back to me. Yeah. Even if somebody, I mean, sometimes there's a daisy chain of like 3-4 wholesalers on the HUD, but and that's how it works, So that's why I don't do too much direct to seller at this point. Again, I'm focused more on the operation, and the deals that are coming my way through wholesalers. I mean, I rather pay. In other words, that's where I'm at now. Before, maybe I couldn't pay. I needed that extra $500,000 to repair the roof, so I needed to do my own marketing and get the lowest price possible. But at this point, I understand the value of somebody getting a property in the contract, following with the potential seller for like a year. Whatever fee they charge, at the end of the day, if the numbers make sense, I'm going to pick it up.
Yeah, you're willing to.
Yeah.
I say this all the time. A lot of our real estate businesses are like several businesses tied together. You have a marketing business, a sales business, operations, and then depending on, if you have rentals or you're fix and flipping, you've got a construction company. So it's almost like a bunch of companies tied together. And if you don't have to do the sales and marketing piece, and you're willing to pay a little bit more for that, then it makes your life easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I know one of the challenges that you faced is, so now you have this big rental portfolio, property values have gone up, and you're positioned right next to downtown, right? So that's going to keep happening the more that downtown, because talk about the San Antonio market the downtown area is not quite as developed as other major Texas markets like, Austin, Houston, and Dallas, right? But when that happens, your values just keep hockey sticking up, right? So then I know the challenge is your rents don't move up as fast.
Yeah.
But the tax value do. The taxes do, the insurance, everything goes right up with the value, but the rents aren't climbing up. So talk about how you've kind of overcome those issues.
Yeah, it's been one of my biggest challenges. So I still remember 2017 to 2018 was one of the biggest jumps in value-wise.
Yeah.
Literally, properties doubled literally overnight, but also my property tax bill tripled, if that makes any sense. But the rents didn't.
Right.
The rents basically stayed at the same amount. So it almost was pushing me out of the market. So what I had to do is basically go into the short-term rental model, and then transition some of those properties that they were in the better locations and maybe the better blocks, and then move them over to short-term rentals, which once again, now we're getting into hospitality, building another business. And like you mentioned, I literally had to buy 2 laundromats just in my area that were existing just to be able to run my operation. So there's a huge operation behind that. But that was one of my biggest challenges. Luckily, like I said, I was able to take a year to really figure out how to build the systems for short-term rentals, get in the rooms and groups with big operators and learn all the softwares, tech stack, strategies and stuff like that. And then finally figured out the secret sauce, and it was working. I think right now we're still even super host with as many short-term rentals, which is something that's not even possible. So it
Yeah.
just lets you know kind of the level of detail, right, to be able to replicate the same experience over and over. And again, we can do a whole nother podcast just on short-term rentals, but
Yeah, for sure.
that's definitely another animal. So for me, it was more of a necessity
Yeah.
to be able to
Get your rents up.
get the rents up, get the cash flow, and at least be able to maintain, hold on to the properties.
Yeah. If you think about, I mean, everybody, there's always examples of people that did really well in the stock market, or somebody that bought Apple a year after it went public and has made a lot of money. But most people sell before then, right? And that's kind of the game you're playing, is like having the fortitude to hold on for as long as possible. And we've got there's a guy, I won't say his name because I don't want to shame him on a podcast here, but there's a guy that's in Investor Fuel. I'll tell you who it is later. That somebody gave his son 100 Bitcoin when it was $1, and it went up to $2, and this guy in our group sold it because that is 100% return. I don't even know what this is, and he sold it at $2,
Jesus.
$2 a coin. But the people that hung on, the people that bought it at $1 or even at $50,000 and have hung on this long, you question all the time whether you should probably sell them. But if you're playing the long game, you just keep finding ways to hold on, right?
Yeah, I think anybody who's been in real estate long enough, has seen the appreciation of just
Yeah.
real estate. I mean, just my own family, moved to California, and they only bought 2 properties, and they did good. Again, holding on to real estate for 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
getting it paid off, and the values out there, are ridiculous. So you could just imagine, maybe San Antonio in 20 years, 30 years. I think it will be no difference than Houston, Dallas,
Yeah.
Austin, which, I mean, those downtowns are already fully gentrified.
Yeah.
I don't think you buy a teardown for 300 grand these days in any of those metro areas.
Yeah.
So, so San Antonio is still a little bit behind the curve. But again, like you said, it's how do you hold on? And building those systems around making them be able to cash flow. So that's my main focus now. I'm even putting 2 properties on each lot, just minimize the risk and try to really increase the cash flow on that.
Is that if you build, if you have are you tearing down and rebuilding, or are you fix and flipping what's there, or what do you typically do?
I'm mostly taking a property that's existing, adding square footage, and that might also mean that I'm going to add a second unit to the property.
Yeah.
So
Like an ADU, or always a separate house, or?
yeah, as long as it's zoned, for multi-unit, then meaning I can put 2 properties on it, then I'm going to do 2 units. It can be an ADU, but the beauty is that even there's really no limit to what the size of the ADU can be. So in my opinion, it's really just 2 properties, as long as the zoning is there.
Yeah.
So, and again, these are the things that maybe I didn't look at 10 years ago, and that's
Yep.
maybe something I would have done the highest and best use of the lot.
Yeah.
Which now it makes it more important because as values are going up, everything's tying. Interest rates are higher.
Yeah.
Then now it even takes you to another level where you're like, okay, I can't be just doing single family. What if the short-term rental market, keeps going down? It's changed also in the last couple of years. So by adding, a couple units in there, you can do one short-term, one long-term, and again, just minimizing some of the risk.
Yeah.
So that's been the biggest change this year for me. So I really rebuild these properties. The average age of a property in downtown San Antonio is at least 100 years. I used to say it was 100 years. Now that I've been in real estate this long, I'm like, every house is about 100 years now. 1920, early 1900s.
Yeah. So how do you navigate working with the city? Because they, on one hand, if they're looking at increasing like property density, so they can have more people in an area, there's some cities that want to work with investors, and there's some cities that see you as a heavy hitter, but they can have a power trip and try to control you. So how do you? I'm sure that you're large enough to where you're dealing with talking with city officials and zoning and things like that. Like, how do you kind of manage that in a way to where you're a partner with the city versus some outsider that's doing things that they don't necessarily want you to do, or they have a power trip. A lot of, I mean, I can tell you a bunch of stories about different cities that I've kind of dealt with, but generally their cities are difficult to work with.
Yeah.
So are you finding that, or are they kind of easy to work with, or how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think San Antonio, it's a big city, fourth largest city, but it's still like a small town, right? So it's a small town feel. So a lot of the people there been there a long time.
Yeah.
So building those relationships with them is definitely key.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, we probably have close to 1,000 building permits in the database. So we pay our fees. And again, when you have so many completed projects and you're doing everything by the book, there's still challenges at the end of the day, because even the city is adapting to those changes to, as they're becoming a bigger city. So there's a lot of confusion. You might go in to the development center and one person might tell you X, the next day somebody tells you Y, because again, it's still new.
Right.
And that's one of the things that also drives me, is that I think eventually there will be more regulation, there'll be more red tape, but right now there's a window of opportunity. I mean, when I started, you could literally demo a house without a permit. Now, you change something, they're pulling up on you and saying, hey, we're checking out your permits, and you're gonna get fined if you don't. So I've been seeing those transitions in the last couple of years. So for me, that gives me that urgency, where it lets me know, man, it's still fun to build, but I know it's gonna get to a point where, kind of like the big cities, try building in LA right now, try building in these big metros. I know builders out there that takes them a year to get their building permit.
Yeah.
So when I hear those type of stories, I'm like, holy moly, I have to floor it out here. I can get a building permit in about a day and a half.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Have you had any risk of, in Dallas, they outlawed short-term rentals at one point, and I think it all got overturned. And obviously there's been other cities too where the city just comes in and like outlaws it, and that'd be painful for you, I assume. So have you had any risk of that? San Antonio, especially proximity to downtown, they have a lot of hotels along the Riverwalk. I'm sure the hotels hate short-term rental owners. Have you had any issues there? And you're never going to know. But how's that landscape been?
Yeah, the short-term rentals, San Antonio is very pro it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's there's rules that you have to do, and more than anything, it's the density. So right now they're only allowing up to 12% density per city block. So basically, 1 out of 12 properties on a city block face can be a short-term rental. So I also see it almost like, like liquor sales. If you have a restaurant and you have the liquor license, well, it's going to be difficult for somebody else to get the liquor license next to you.
Yeah.
Or there's already too many on that.
So do you have a permit?
Yeah.
For that? Okay. And then they limit other people from coming in.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that's another reason why getting into the short-term rentals now might be a better benefit than down the road, because I think it's going to come down to a point where, if you want to do short-term rentals, you really can't, unless you're going to take the risk of running it without a permit. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be nearly impossible at that point.
Yeah. So what are some things you do to force appreciation? If you're in a neighborhood, like you have a balance. You don't want the taxes associated with the property values going up, but you want the property values to go up because your net worth goes up. Yeah. So how do you balance that? And what are some things you do to kind of force appreciation in your situation?
So definitely making, the multi-unit strategy to offset the tax with the cash flow is going to be my main strategy, and just adding square footage. So basically, my typical project will be a property that's maybe a 2-bedroom, 1,000 square feet, and if I keep it as a single property, I might go to 2,000 square feet. If it's a multi-unit, I'll be near the 3,000 square feet. So that's my bread and butter, basically, project that I will do all day, as long as the lot size in the original property, it's a certain price.
Right.
So I think just buying right is probably the most important, because what you do with the land and the existing building, it's all going to determine on how you bought it, because you can spend $500,000 on a renovation, but if the max value or is capped out at 300, then it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So That's one way to basically offset the the taxes. Also, San Antonio has a lot of incentives. When you do historical projects, they will freeze the taxes for 10 years
Oh, wow.
to the previous value that was last assessed. So, in other words, they're incentivizing investors to renovate these historical homes and give you the tax benefit. So I enjoy doing historical houses. It's a little bit they're more complicated, right? You really have to basically everything you're going to do, you have to put it in writing
Yeah.
to the smallest details. So it takes a lot of
And
process
I
on that.
presume they have specific standards you have to stay inside to kind of restore some of the historical components.
Oh,
And things like
absolutely,
that. Yeah.
absolutely. You can't change the window, door,
Mm,
keep all the ornaments that the property has.
yeah.
I once knocked out a chimney and I had to literally replicate it back. And I remember when I hired the contractor, I said, "Look, I'm not paying you for the chimney. I'm paying you for a replica, and I'm willing to pay whatever it costs." And he pulled it off. So.
Yeah.
So I made all the mistakes,
Yep.
working on historical homes in the past. But now I think we're, with the experience, you get better at it, and now we enjoy it.
Yeah. So what's the end game for you of this strategy? Like at some point, it's not obviously the rental markets. I think appreciation. I mean, I think appreciation is going to continue to happen in most areas, especially in Texas. And I think the rents are always going to continue to lag because affordability reasons are going to continue to make Texas markets and a lot of markets more and more unaffordable, than they used to be at least. So the game for you, what's the end game? Like, where are you going here?
So right now we're obviously in the growth phase, right? I think eventually there will be a phase where we're either gonna sell off some of the portfolio, pay off the rest. Um, but at the end of the day, that's the goal. The goal is to hold on to them until um, it's the right time to sell.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's going to be other opportunities, other arenas that you reinvest, whether that's getting into apartment investing or you know I don't think it makes sense just to pay a ton of tax selling
Right.
properties. So there has to be a strategy for that. I just think it's like velocity money has to keep growing
Yeah.
somehow. So there'll be opportunities I think in the future to invest in maybe bigger properties
Sure. Yeah.
where now it's less management intensive versus like right now you got 100 roofs, you got a hundred of every 500 toilets, that type of thing. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pretty challenging.
Yep. And how about for you? What's in your future? Just to continue. It's not, you're so focused. I assume it's just to continue to focus on what you've got going on here.
Yeah, my next phase, I think at the end of the day, I'm gonna get into the educational space too, where I'm gonna help out other individuals, with my experience, and help them build a rental portfolio.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people out there that have had success in their trade, whether they're a professional, um, contractor or teacher or whatever the case may be, and they know they want to invest into real estate, especially rentals.
Yeah.
And I know I can help them with that. So at the end of the day, I gone through the ringer, right? I've been in lawsuits. I made every mistake you can imagine. So I think that people can really piggyback off that. And again, it goes back with my values of giving back. So I think that's in the near future, and I'm focusing on it right now. That's why we're doing podcasts, we're doing social media, and just kind of letting people know, that we're out here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if folks wanted to learn more about you, connect, any of those things, whether they're in San Antonio or anywhere else in the world, where can they go to connect with you?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram at the Richard Gonzalez SA. And I love to connect with you guys. I partner up with a lot of people, so I'm an open book at this point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we'll add the link down below. So thanks for joining us today.
Hey, I appreciate it, Mike.
Good
Thank
to
you.
see you. Yeah, yeah. Guys, there's a great lesson here in terms of just staying focused. It's so easy as an entrepreneur to think the grass is greener. Things get tough, and then you move into something else or you go try something else. And the reality is the real wealth, the money that'll be made for you is to stay focused and work through those kind of ceilings you hit and just get better, better, better. Because if you go jump into something else, that's going to get hard at some point too. And if you basically are just a quitter that every couple of years you jump into something that seems easy, you're really never going to move forward that much. So hope you got some good value today. Make sure you're following Richard. We'll add a link down below in the show notes here. Great guy. He's doing some amazing things. So appreciate you joining us today. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.